the gut microbiome, it looks like it's involved in everything. I mean, it conditions your mental health, it influences your interactions with the environment. I mean, it's the key to health and how you move through the world.
Right.
So
I think you gotta have a dream.
The School of Greatness.
really,
Yeah.
Please welcome Lewis Howes.
I wanted to ask you first about cognitive decline. And I feel like a lot of people, especially over the last few years, have a fear of cognitive decline from foods they've eaten, from potential injections they've taken, or other things or medicines that maybe are hurting or helping. So I wanted to talk about cognitive decline first and your thoughts about this. And
I think there's a lot of fear out there about it, also because people know people with cognitive decline.
Yes.
You know, people have relatives who've developed dementia. We see people whose memories are failing. I know a lot of people, if they have memory lapses, immediately begin to think, "Am I getting Alzheimer's?" You know, there's just a lot of fear around that.
Yeah.
So
what is the root cause of Alzheimer's?
we don't know.
We don't know.
I mean, there is a minority of cases are genetic or familial, but most of them aren't, and we really don't know. I have to say my gut feeling with a lot of neurodegenerative disease, certainly with Parkinson's disease and ALS, I think these are environmentally caused mostly.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, is that environment like what's in the air environment? Is it
It's
actually
probably everything, but a big one is things like exposure to agrochemicals. There's a higher incidence of Parkinson's in agricultural workers. I think all the stuff we're reading about plastics, I think it's good to be just cognizant of potential toxins in the environment.
Right.
But I will tell you that in terms of preventing cognitive decline, probably the two most important pieces of advice I can give you is don't get hit in the head, you know, which means really being careful if you're playing football or basketball. And I must say, I don't know what the future of football is going to be, but I think we're going to see more and more concern about, you know, traumatic brain injury. And that has long-range consequences. And the other one I would say is don't smoke. You know, that tobacco smoking is the single greatest cause of preventable serious disease. Really? And it strongly affects brain function as well, because nicotine constricts blood vessels, so it reduces blood flow. So those are just two, you know, basic pieces of advice that I would give you. You know, don't get hit in the head, don't smoke.
Well, I think people don't understand like the sadness and the pain that happens when you watch someone that you care about mentally decline, cognitively, right? Like
really.
My dad got in a traumatic car accident where the car came through the windshield and hit him in the head.
Yeah.
He was in a coma for 3 months and he never recovered. He was all physically here, but mentally
that's really
gone.
Really sad.
And it was really sad. For 17 years, we lived with that experience with our father.
Yeah.
It was extremely sad because you feel hopeless. You feel like there's nothing we can do.
Right.
We tried everything, and there's only so much farther he can get back to. So number one is definitely don't get hit in the head, because that's what happened. But a lot of people don't get hit in the head, and they still have a cognitive decline.
Right.
Not a lot of people, but that happens for some people. And I'm hearing environment, I'm hearing smoking, but are there also like foods or other things?
No, there's a lot of other things. So let's talk about food nutrition first. We know that antioxidant protection is very good for the brain. So you want to make sure you're having an adequate intake of protective antioxidants, which you mostly get from consuming a variety of fruits and vegetables of good quality. And in general, it's a good idea to try to eat across the color spectrum.
Yes.
You know, because each color of fruits and vegetables has pigments that have particular beneficial effects. So that's just one good general rule.
Okay.
Another is to make sure that you've got an adequate intake of omega-3 fatty acids, which are very important for brain health, especially one of them, DHA. And you know, the best sources of these are oily fish. So it's salmon, sardines, herring, mackerel. But if you're not a fish eater or you're a vegetarian or vegan, there are now algae-based omega-3 supplements that you can take. But very important to think where your omega-3s are coming from. There are plant sources of omega-3s, things like flax seeds and hemp seeds, but the plant sources don't give you exactly what the body needs. It has to convert them. So it's good to eat those, but it's good to get some of the preformed long-chain omega-3s from fish or algae.
Right.
So
is algae just as powerful as the fish?
Yeah, it's the same. It gives you the same compounds.
That's good.
And that's only become available relatively recently.
Interesting.
Because I used to, really argue with vegetarians and vegans saying you got to eat some fish or take a fish oil supplement. But now I can tell them to take an algae
Gotcha.
supplement,
Okay.
which is great. And there's one class of compounds that seem particularly important are called polyphenols. It's a large group of compounds found mostly in fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices. Tea is a good source of them, berries, chocolate. These have very protective effects on the brain. Now, as you know, I'm a big fan of green tea.
Yes.
A lot of research on that and being useful for cardiovascular health, cancer prevention, brain health. And so I think, and recently there was have you heard of the green Mediterranean diet?
I heard about it researching your current stuff, but I don't know anything about it.
No, it's just gotten some publicity. We have a lot of scientific evidence for the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, that in terms of its overall longevity and reduced risk of disease.
What's the green Mediterranean
diet? So the green
diet?
Mediterranean diet is reducing animal foods even more, increasing plant foods, and particularly loading the diet with sources of polyphenols. And they recommended berries and green tea particularly. Of the forms of green tea, the one that I'm particularly fond of is matcha, which is the powdered green tea. Because of the way that it's grown, it has a higher content of antioxidant polyphenols. And it's also, you consume the whole leaf. It's the whole powdered leaf. Right. So that's the one I would recommend.
Yeah, not the Starbucks matcha, which has got tons of sugar.
Exactly,
processed,
right, and is low quality to begin with. Yeah, so that's and those are the main nutritional recommendations that I would give you.
Gotcha.
Then the other things are all the lifestyle recommendations that you make and I make. Getting adequate rest and sleep, regular physical activity. Those are the obvious ones. Learning and practicing some methods of neutralizing the harmful effects of stress. The main hormone that mediates stress is cortisol. Cortisol is directly toxic to cells in the brain.
Really? So the more stressed you are, the more
cortisol circulating, and cortisol can kill brain cells.
Wow.
Particularly in the hippocampus, which is the region that mediates emotion and memory. So that's all you need to know, that you want to do something to keep your cortisol levels, moderate or low.
So would you say from that scenario, if someone has kind of a high level of ongoing stress for decades, are they more susceptible to cognitive decline?
Well, I would say probably. I can't give you hard evidence for that, but knowing what we know about cortisol, that if you have higher levels than you should for your life, probably it's going to damage your brain.
Right.
And there are many options for learning to control stress. My favorite are breathing techniques, and whenever you want, I can, talk about.
What's the top breathing technique that you think
the
supports
4-7-8 breath? It's so simple and free, and takes no equipment. It's an ancient yoga technique, and I've popularized it, and it's got incredible traction. The YouTube videos of me teaching it are, all you have to do is put in 4-7-8 breath and my name. There are millions of views.
Wow!
And it's
I
will. And every few days I get newspaper articles about it from India, from Indonesia. Another story about the 4-7-8 breath. A ballet company in Toronto produced a ballet based on the 4-7-8 breath. I have no idea what that was. Was like the late Prime Minister of Japan, who was killed, Abe, gave interviews saying that I taught him the 4-7-8 breath, and it was very helpful to him. I never met him, so I don't know what he was thinking of. Maybe he read it somewhere. But this is just, it's a great thing. So, and I learned it from one of my mentors, was an elderly osteopathic physician, Robert Fulford. I met him when he was in his 80s. Best healer I've ever met. Just used gentle, hands-on. And he said breathing was the most important function of the body.
Really?
Yeah. And a lot of his work was designed to free up restrictions in breathing, and he produced incredible cures. Anyway, he taught me this. So the basic method is you breathe in through your nose quietly to a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, blow air out forcibly through your mouth to a count of 8. You repeat that for 4 breath cycles, and that's it. It takes all of 30 seconds, but it's a practice. So the benefits of it come from doing this regularly. So you have to do this religiously, at least twice a day.
Really?
Yeah, I do it in the morning when I first get up, before I do some sitting meditation. I do it when I get in bed to fall asleep. And I do it any time in the day that I feel stressed or I want to relax. So I'll just show you what it looks like when we do it together. So it's you can do it in any position, but if you're seated, it's good to keep your back straight and your feet on the floor.
Okay.
So in yoga, this is a yoga breath, and in yoga you're asked to keep your tongue in the yogic position, which is touching the tip of your tongue to the ridge of tissue behind your upper front teeth, like that. So you blow air out around it. So it looks like this. That's it, 4 breath cycles. Wow. It's a little hard for me to come back and talk to you after I do
because you're so relaxed.
It produces a very nice altered state of consciousness that I'd rather stay in.
Right, for longer.
Yeah. Anyway, so only 4 breaths at one time. You can do it more frequently, but you got to do it at least twice a day.
Got it.
And after a month, if you're comfortable, you can do it 8 breath cycles, and then that's the absolute maximum. And it's good to learn how to slow it down as you practice. What limits you is how long you can comfortably hold your breath, but with time you can extend that. And after 4 to 6 weeks, there are really amazing changes. It lowers heart rate, lowers blood pressure, improves digestion. It is the most powerful anti-anxiety method I have ever found.
Wow.
That makes the drugs we use for anxiety look pathetic. It gets better the more you repeat it.
Wow.
One of the most useful things I've ever discovered, and of all the, I've explored the world for natural remedies, and of all the things that I've found and told patients to do, this is the one that I've gotten the most spectacular feedback on.
And it's free.
It's free,
No
takes
drug,
no equipment.
There's no money involved.
No, and by the way, this is, I think, a perfect example of what integrative medicine can do. It can find things that aren't even on the radar of conventional medicine and bring them into the mainstream and lower healthcare costs and improve outcomes. So anyway, that is my personal favorite method of stress reduction, to keep cortisol levels low. And one of the aims of that is preventing cognitive decline and promoting brain health. Now, other things you can do, you're big into physical exercise, physical activity. I think mental exercise is very important too. And that there are many, many choices there. I love to do word puzzles. My favorite are acrostics, which I find more interesting and challenging than crossword puzzles. And I just love. They're great. It's like it's a brain exercise for me, and it's fun. Have you played Wordle, which is going on? I mean,
I've played a couple times. Yeah, I need to get into it.
Unbelievable how that has gained popularity all over. So I usually do Wordle every morning when I get up.
Really?
And anyway, that keeps my brain active.
Okay.
Another wonderful method is to learn another language. You don't have to master the language. It's the attempt to learn it.
It's challenging.
Yeah,
I'm in the attempt right now. I'm learning Spanish.
Right,
It's so difficult, but it makes you work your brain.
Absolutely. I speak Spanish, and
really?
What I discovered is in high school I studied German. It was a horrible experience. My teacher was from Berlin. He was a real sadistic German teacher, and it was 4 years of drilling, blah blah blah. And afterwards I went to Germany, and I could speak passably, but for Spanish, I just went and lived in Mexico, in a village in Mexico, and I was in a place where I was forced to speak Spanish, and in a month, I was speaking passably, and then I drove to South America, and when I got to Colombia, where I lived for a few years, I gave a lecture in Spanish.
Come on.
Seriously.
That's incredible.
Now, so, and what I've learned, and this is not big news, babies do not have minds that learn grammar, right? And they learn language, and the only skills you need to learn a language are to be able to listen and imitate. and you have to have strong motivation. So babies have really strong motivation.
To survive.
To survive, right? So if you put yourself in a situation where you have to learn and you listen and you imitate, you learn. You don't need to learn grammar and study rules and all that, which makes it much harder. We all have that capacity to do. Anyway, that's a very good thing for your brain. Another is trying to learn a musical instrument. I'm terrible at that. I failed. I was forced to try to play the clarinet when I was a kid as a dismal failure. So that didn't work for me. But for some people, that's an example.
Sure.
Here's another one I'll give you. You know the frustration of trying to deal with a new computer operating system? Mm-hmm. You know, there's like several
Switching
days.
from PC to Mac.
Yeah,
and
like that.
I
It's
want to
like,
go back.
You know, there's a period where it is just, that's exactly where you want to put your brain.
You want to put it there.
You want to put your brain in that place where it, where you have to like change gears, rewire. That's good exercise for the brain.
Is there too much of that where it hurts the brain, or is it
Well,
like...
no, I think you just get frustrated and
you
give
stop
up.
for a bit.
Yeah, right. And then one other tip I would give, I think it is very good to associate with people who are healthy, happy, who have positive outlooks.
Yeah.
And when some years ago, the MacArthur Foundation did a study of successful aging. They identified a large group of people as successful agers, and they looked to see what they had in common. The two factors that stood out, and this overrode everything else, whether they took vitamins, whether they ate this,
Right.
whether they exercised. The two that stood out was maintenance of regular physical activity throughout life, and the second was maintenance of good social and intellectual connectivity. And I think that last one, that is a challenge. You know, first of all, in our society, as people get older, they tend to get isolated with other people, other old people.
Why is that in our society?
I think we don't want old people around. You know, we don't want to look at them. They remind us that we're going to get old.
Really?
Yeah, we want them out of the way. And like,
But in other societies, they don't do that.
well, in some, like Japan, is notably different. I would say in most Latin societies, older people, it's like they live with you.
Yeah.
You know, they're not isolated in old age homes. But I think I think the opportunities for social and intellectual connection diminish in this society as you get older. And I think that's been particularly bad during the pandemic. There's been much greater social isolation, people staying at home, people interacting virtually. And I think this looks really key to good brain health, is like having, I'd say vibrant social and intellectual relationships.
Yeah, it's interesting because my girlfriend Martha, she's from Mexico, and her family is very socially connected.
Yeah.
Activities all the time, involving the grandparents with the grandchildren, and connecting the dots constantly, playing games, having fun, and singing music and playing instruments and like adventures.
So
I've
got a story for you, which is very powerful. I knew a woman who was a pediatric intensive care nurse, and she told me this was over a period of about 6-7 years. She had seen a number of cases of kids, teenagers who'd been in devastating, and mostly motorcycle accidents, devastating head injuries, who were in vegetative states in the hospital. And she said she saw, I think it was like 8 or 10 cases of kids who recovered completely, to the astonishment of doctors. But after she'd seen about a certain number of them, she noticed that they were all Hispanic. Huh. And she'd never seen an Anglo kid in that state recover.
Really?
And she thought about what's the difference. And then she realized that with the Hispanic kids, there was always at all hours an extended family around the bed. People talking to the kid, touching the kid, and the white kids were always there by themselves.
Really?
With nobody, yeah. And she said that clearly was what made the difference.
Because that was the only difference,
Right.
essentially, is
Yeah.
sethat environment.
Yeah, they were all in basically the same vegetative state.
And some of
but
these...
it was that kind of constant stimulation, touch, that kept their brain, that made their brains recover.
Even when they were in comas and vegetative states.
Yeah.
And she said that some of these had like full recoveries or big recoveries.
Full recoveries, yeah.
Walking around talking normal, thinking clearly. Whereas the other kids,
Right. She'd
same
never
thing.
seen it happen in an Anglo kid who had nobody in the room with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or maybe they would come for like an hour and then
Yeah.
leave or something, right? Or,
Yeah.
wow.
So that's very powerful. And, I think that's something we should really guard against, is like not getting socially isolated and spending time with people that stimulate us.
Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're gonna love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video.
Well, it's interesting because we were just talking about this beforehand. You told me you're 80 years young.
Yeah.
80 years young. I'm going to be 40.
You're a kid.
But here's what the funny thing you said. You said, when I was young, 80 seemed like,
Ancient.
And 40 used to think like, oh, they're really old too.
Yeah, right.
When you're like 8.
Right.
You see a 40-year-old, you're
40-year-old,
like,
right.
you're old, man, right?
Yeah.
So I still feel like I'm a child in a lot of ways, childlike energy.
Yeah, that's
right?
good.
Not childish, but childlike
Right.
energy. And I feel like you have that too.
Yeah.
You've got this, joyful, youthful energy about you. If you could go back to 40, you've lived an amazing life. And you've been changing the world for the last 40 years, but if you could go back, is there anything you would add to support you for longevity, now you know everything, beyond what we talked about? Or anything you'd take away from habits you did to support you in setting yourself up for these last 40 years and beyond?
I grew up in a row house in Philadelphia, in a city, so I was pretty disconnected from nature. And then I was, in school for a long time. I think if I could go back, I would spend much more time out in nature and in the wilderness at an early age.
Why is that?
Because I think it is very good for your spirit as well as your physical being. And, I would like to have had more time for that when I was young. Mm-hmm. I didn't eat very wisely until, in my early life. I didn't know. And, I would probably adopt better eating habits early on. I'd probably practice my 4-7-8 breath earlier in life, things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of the bad eating habits, what do you think are the foods that everyone should avoid? Like the biggest killer.
That's very simple.
Of the brain.
That's so simple. It's refined, processed, and manufactured food. That's it. That's simple. You want to try to eliminate that. It's all the stuff, mostly all the stuff in the middle of the supermarket. All the snack
5%
food,
of
all the
stuff you
snack
should
food.
eat.
Yeah, right. It's all that, and that's the first. I advocate an anti-inflammatory diet because chronic low-level inflammation seems to be the root cause of most serious disease that kills and disables people prematurely, and the mainstream diet promotes inflammation.
Yeah.
And all that processed, refined, manufactured food gives us the wrong fats, the fats that promote inflammation, the wrong kinds of carbs, and not enough of the protective elements like those polyphenols and antioxidants that are mostly in fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices.
What causes more inflammation in the brain? Is it stresses of life or foods that
I think
cause
I don't think you can separate that. Right. It's all of it.
Yeah.
It's all of it.
If you had to eliminate one, like which one is less damaging, do you think? Like if you eat healthy perfectly, but you're constantly in a low level of stress or high level of stress versus I am around beautiful people in a great environment, but I'm eating the worst
That's too hard. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wrote a book on eating well for optimum health, and I quoted in it, I think she was a 106-year-old Russian woman who was asked what was the secret of her longevity, and she said, "I never eat vegetables."
It was like it went against everything.
Right. So, and when you see people who smoked all their lives and drink like fish and they have very good
There's
genes.
exceptions,
They have good genes, right?
But maybe they could have lasted longer.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I've never ate vegetables.
I never eat vegetables. That
That's
was her
hilarious.
secret of her long life.
Oh my goodness! Did she have a different type of diet? Was she like?
I think she ate meat and potatoes.
Wow, that's amazing.
And probably vodka.
Now, how we talked about this a little bit the last time, which I think is fascinating that you were willing to talk about relationship stuff, because I think it sounds like good social connections is the key to successful aging.
Right.
And probably a great intimate partner or relationships intimately can be supportive or harmful.
You can't. Yeah, exactly.
Can be
It can go
extremely
either
harmful,
way.
right?
Right. Yeah.
How does one learn, with your amount of wisdom, to step into a healthy, loving relationship and sustain it?
Well, I think a big key, we talked about this, you have to start by loving yourself.
Man, it's so good. That's why I love this guy. So good.
And that's a hard one for a lot of people, you know, that we seek love in an other person. You know, we project something of ourselves onto them. And, you know, but it has to start with loving yourself. And from that place, you can, I think, enter into good relationships with other people.
When was the age where you feel like you fully loved and accepted yourself?
I think it was not until it might not have been until my 40s.
Really?
Yeah, so you're right at the cusp there.
And lots of pain and suffering before.
Yeah.
Really in your 40s?
Yeah, I don't know that I want to go back and be young again. I mean, in some ways, I'd like to have a more elastic body and things like that. But I think things are easier now for me.
Why is that? Because you love yourself?
Yeah, and I think I'm more accepting of myself and more accepting of things. You know, when I wrote a book on healthy aging, and one of the things I looked at was what gets better with age, and what can we see? What are examples out there where we see that things improve with age? One of them I wrote about was cheese. We were talking about cheese.
Man, stinky cheese.
Okay,
is the best.
stinky cheese. So some cheeses get very better with age. Violins, old trees, better. You know, and when you look at wine, you know, what are the qualities in these older things that we like? They're more complex, they're deeper, they have more character.
Rich.
Right, so you can see that in people as well. And you know that if we lived in a society where we valued old people instead of shutting them away, you know, they can be great repositories of wisdom. And I interviewed a lot of older people about what they saw get better. Interesting answers. A lot of people felt that they were more accepting of things as they got older, that they had more equilibrium, that things didn't throw them off balance as much as when they were young.
Right.
You know, that's interesting.
They weren't as triggered, or they could like manage life easier.
Yeah. I've heard some scientists say that their memories have gotten better with age, and they think it's because they have more filed away. So when something new comes along, they have more to compare it to know where it fits, and that's interesting. You know, when we think about cognitive decline, some things may get better.
What have been the main benefits for you with age?
I think greater self-acceptance. You know. Definitely, as well, and in some ways, I'm less patient with things and people that take up my time for no good reason. You know, I really want to spend time with people that make me feel good about myself, about the world.
So you say no to a lot of things that you maybe would have said yes to earlier in life.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm more discriminating about that.
What was there a process or like a moment that allowed you to say, oh, actually, I can accept and love myself, and this is how I'm learning how to do it? Was there like a period of time?
No, I think it was gradual, but it was in midlife, definitely.
Did you have a crisis before then? Did you go through midlife crisis?
I had a period of depression.
Really?
Of several years, yeah. And, you know, that just lifted at some point. I think some of it was becoming more physically active. Some of it was changing my diet. Some of it was practicing, meditation and my breathing technique. And some of it was, I think, a natural process that happened with getting older.
Yeah. I've never had a midlife crisis. I don't want to have a midlife crisis. Not like a whole
You never know.
You never
know, right.
But what do you think causes that for people, like to go through a quarter-life crisis, midlife crisis, where they like say, I'm just going to change everything. I'm going to go through a divorce. I'm going to get married to this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to, buy a sports car. Whatever it is that happens for people. What causes a crisis?
I guess, people sometimes feel stuck, and it often just seems to happen around 40 and that period.
Right. Do you think it's because people aren't in alignment with like where they think they should be going, or they're not living their purpose? Or
I think that's a big one.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you were living your purpose though during that time. You were doing the medicine stuff.
I was off on my own, and but you know I was people thought I was crazy because I dropped out of medicine. I wasn't practicing. I was living like a hippie. I was
Exploring
right. And I did not get a lot of reinforcement from the world for what I was doing.
Especially not back then.
Back then. But I knew what I was doing was right and what I had to do.
Right. So you lived in Germany for a while?
No, I'd visited there.
Visited Germany? You lived in Mexico for a while?
I lived in South America for
Colombia,
a while.
right?
Colombia especially, yeah.
For how long?
About 3.5 years.
What was it about the South American culture, about longevity, that inspired you?
Well, I was interested in, when I was growing up, I remember having a kid's book. And it was about, I think it was about a South American village, but it was about the Andes Mountains. I thought they were my mountains, Andes Mountains. So I developed this. Yeah,
So my mountains, where are they?
My mountains, yeah. So I had this, I know a deep thing I wanted to visit there. And then when I was a student at Harvard, my mentor there was Richard Schultes, who was the father of modern ethnobotany. And he had lived in the Amazon for 14 years and discovered all sorts of hallucinogenic plants, and he was a fascinating teacher, and he sent me down there to study medicinal plants. And so I think what really drew me down there was the culture that was very connected to nature and to plants. And so I learned a lot of things there. I visited shamans and did all sorts of crazy things.
Experimented,
right,
yeah,
exactly,
a lot of stuff.
yeah.
Interesting. How, you joked about the woman who, said my secret was not eating vegetables,
Yeah.
but how important are plants in improving cognitive brain health in general?
Well, as
for
I
most
said, a
people?
lot of the main sources of these protective polyphenols and antioxidants are plants. There's so many plants out there with so many different properties, and the foods that have become popular up here are such a small slice of what's possible. So I've also spent a lot of time in Asia and in other cultures, and I always am interested in the foods that people eat, and I've tried to bring them back here
Really?
and turn people on to them. Yeah.
What are the main foods that you try to have consistently, like that are unique or different than kind of the standard American diet?
Well, I use a lot of herbs and spices in my own cooking. One of the ones that I'm very big on these days is turmeric. The yellow spice, which Indians eat every meal from infancy to old age. And in North America, until recently, the only way we got it was in yellow mustard, which is more a turmeric preparation than a mustard preparation, and in curry. It's what makes curry yellow. But now, when I was doing that research on aging, I made a number of trips to Okinawa, which at the time that I was doing it had the highest number of centenarians in the world. And I made a number of trips there, and the diet there is astonishing. They have an incredible variety of sea vegetables, land vegetables, fish. It's not like the Japanese, mainland Japanese diet. Okinawans are not Japanese. There's something else.
What's different than the mainland?
They drink jasmine tea, not green tea. They eat more pork, and the pork is long cooked to reduce fat. They eat more tofu. The tofu has a higher fat content. They eat this great variety of unusual vegetables. But the beverage that it was very hot and humid when I was there at the time of year. And a very popular beverage was cold, unsweetened turmeric tea. Made from a fermented form of turmeric. Delicious, really delicious. And I just recently been able to bring it into this country and sell it through our matcha company, matcha.com.
That's cool.
You can drink it hot or cold. But anyway, turmeric is the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory agent that we know of.
Turmeric.
Yep.
The most powerful, you think?
It is. It's the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory agent. A lot of research on it. And interestingly, India has the lowest rate of Alzheimer's disease in the world, and people think that has to do with the amount of turmeric they
The
consume.
lowest rate. I think they're also like tightly social,
Yeah,
family
true,
ties.
true.
It's like
They're not. I mean, their cardiovascular health is not great.
Yeah.
Their food habits have changed, but they have some protection against Alzheimer's, and
With turmeric,
turmeric
you think?
might be. Yeah, that might be the factor that accounts for that.
wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's an example of
They have the
something
lowest amount of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yes.
India. Is it
India.
regions of India or
I
like
think
the country?
rural India, especially. Yeah.
Wow.
So interesting, but that's turmeric's a good thing to include in your diet.
And even just like a turmeric supplement every day is a good
Yeah,
thing also.
that's fine,
You don't have
and-
to cook with it, everything. But
Right, all that.
Where,
You can't we don't know how to cook with it. Like
yeah.
Americans
Throwing it
buy
on, it's
from
not going
right.
to taste good on a steak. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you put too much, it's astringent, not pleasant. I had a student, a family physician from South India, and she was a very good cook. And she said she tells her patients to try putting a level teaspoon of powdered turmeric in beans, bean dishes, stews, soups. That level of it is
Level teaspoon.
good.
and
Yeah,
Put it in and that's it.
yeah. But that fermented turmeric is a great drink. It's delicious.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never been able to get into fermented.
It doesn't.
things.
This doesn't taste.
Doesn't taste fermented.
No,
Okay,
no.
that's good.
But fermented things are good to get into.
I know. That's what I hear. It's so good.
But if
for
you
the
like
gut.
stinky cheese, why don't you like fermented
Man, the
things?
stinky cheese is amazing.
Well, that's a fermented product. I mean, it's got a living.
It's got a
culture.
different smell and taste than like a liquidy or like a fermented I don't know, vegetables. Like I don't know. It just doesn't. It's just like a weird aftertaste. Huh. But the stinky cheese.
Maybe you've
I'm
never
all-
had good fermented stuff.
Maybe that's what it is.
Because to me, good fermented stuff. It's got a fresh, really fresh, crisp. I make my own sauerkraut. I make kimchi. I make pickles. It's really delicious. You need to. I got to get you some good
I have the
stuff.
palate of a 7-year-old. I mean, I'm
No,
like,
if you like stinky cheese.
well, that's the only thing I came up with. But most stuff, like I'm very picky. That's the challenge. What are the main benefits of fermented foods?
Well, mostly you're eating. First of all, the foods are partially digested, so they're more assimilable.
Easier on the stomach.
The microorganisms have done work for you that your body doesn't have to do. But the living cultures are what's really important. This feeds your gut microbiome, and this is one of the most exciting, revolutionary changes in medical thinking in my lifetime. When I was in medical school, I learned that we have these organisms in our gut and that assist in digestion, and that was it. And that people who ate yogurt or took acidophilus supplements were health nuts. And now, the gut microbiome, it looks like it's involved in everything. I mean, it conditions your mental health. It influences your interactions with the environment. I mean, it's the key to health and how you move through the world.
Right.
So the gut microbiome in our society has changed for the worse in recent years as a result of several things. One is incredible overuse of antibiotics, which do wreak havoc on the gut microbiome. Decline in breastfeeding, because breastfeeding provides organisms, early in life. Increased consumption of these refined, processed, and manufactured foods, which feed the wrong kinds of organisms. And finally, the unbelievable rise in cesarean deliveries. Wow. Because when babies are born, normally the organisms they pick up come from the birth canal and colonize the gut.
Right.
When they're born by cesarean, they come from the skin, and it's a different population of microorganisms, and they get established for life.
Right.
So the combination of those things, I think, and this has to do with why there's a rise of allergies, autoimmune diseases, maybe things like ADHD. So you want to keep your gut microbiome healthy. So one way to do that is to eat fermented foods.
Oh man,
Sorry.
If I don't like the smell or the taste of fermented foods, is there anything else besides kombucha?
Well, you don't have to. I don't drink kombucha. I like sauerkraut. I like kimchi, good pickles, miso.
Miso.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do
That's
miso.
a good one. All right.
I can
That's
do
a good
miso
one.
soup.
Okay.
Yeah,
a good one.
that's fermented.
Yeah,
Miso soup.
miso's a fermented.
It
soy
doesn't have
food.
the smell of the fermented
No,
I'm
I hear
used
you.
to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Another
miso
one.
soup
Did
is
you
good.
ever eat tempeh?
Yeah, I can do tempeh.
So tempeh is a fermented soy food.
Okay.
Also.
I don't like soy as much, but I mean, if that's got the benefits, all.
Well, the tempeh doesn't taste like soy.
Yeah.
It tastes like it's meaty.
Right. Okay. So temptation.
Okay, you can
miso.
take yogurt, that has living cultures in it, or
Okay,
kefir.
okay, all right.
You can take probiotic supplements, but they may not be as good as the foods. And the other thing you can do is make sure you're consuming enough prebiotics, which are foods that feed the beneficial microorganisms, and that's mostly fiber-containing foods.
Fibers.
Beans,
Vegetables.
vegetables, whole grains.
So you want prebiotics and probiotics, both.
Yeah.
You want to consume a lot of them daily, or
Prebiotics you should have on a regular basis. That should just be part of your diet. And probiotics, whatever foods you can take, or you can take, as I said, a probiotic supplement.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if I'm going to have the palate of a 7-year-old, take the probiotic supplements.
But especially important if, for any reason, you have to take antibiotics. It's really
Take those
important.
afterwards.
It will be from the moment you start taking the
Really?
antibiotic. Yeah.
What happens if you're taking antibiotics and you're not taking probiotics at the same time?
It drastically changes your gut microbiome. Wow. It wipes out a lot of the good organisms.
How long does it take to get back to like a healthy space?
We don't know. We don't know. I mean, maybe the body comes back pretty quick from that. I don't know.
Wow. But it's important to take it before and during
Yep.
and after, it sounds
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
to get it back to
Yeah.
baseline. Man, because I just took some antibiotics a couple weeks ago from a dental surgery I
Yep.
had to take, and so it didn't get infected.
Right.
But I should be overloading now on probiotics. It
Yeah.
sounds like, okay. See, I should have talked to you before
Should have
that,
talked to me beforehand. Too late now.
What is it? You mentioned that India is the lowest rate of dementia or Alzheimer's? Is that what you said?
Alzheimer's.
What countries or regions are the highest rate of Alzheimer's? Do we know?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, Alzheimer's is pretty consistent around the world.
Yeah.
So as I say, we
But
don't.
it seems lower in India,
It seems lower in India, rural Indian population.
Interesting.
Yeah.
but it's consistent around the world.
Yeah.
There's not one country that has higher
Not
rates.
that I know of.
Everywhere I've got you.
Not that I know of.
That'd be interesting to see.
Yes, maybe we do know that. I don't know that.
It seems like there's an issue in America. I mean, maybe I'm just hearing about it, but is it? And when does it usually?
Well, we used to call, when I was growing up, my mother's father was senile. So that's what we said, people got senile. That was dementia. Now, there's different forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is one kind of dementia that's associated with particular brain changes. So maybe there's an increase in our population. Maybe that's because we have more older people around. I don't know that it's actually increased. May call it by a different name.
But there are a lot of people over 100 who don't have decline as well. Right?
Exactly, right.
But it sounds like they're doing a lot of these things correctly. They have
Right.
strong social ties. They're doing the exercises and brain games or music or
Right,
languages.
exactly,
They're
right.
doing something challenging
Yep.
for the brain that's like making them think, or puzzles or whatever it might be. They're also eating generally well, it sounds like, with these types of foods and polyphenols and antioxidants and all these different things, and anti-inflammatory turmeric and stuff
Right.
like that. So it sounds like they're doing more of these things.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's exceptions.
Yep.
You hear someone smoking their whole life and living to 100.
Yeah.
But in general, it sounds like you do a lot of these things, you could live a longer, healthier life.
Now, the other one is trying to do whatever you can to avoid environmental toxins, and that's not so easy.
Yeah.
You can get a water filter for your home, which is a good idea. Maybe an air filter, depending. But I think things like getting plastics out of your life, avoiding secondhand smoke, just paying attention to all this. I'm a big proponent of organic agriculture, not because I think the food's necessarily more nutritious, but to avoid contamination with things you don't want. And, it's gotten easier to get organic produce, but for many people it's difficult. Either it's not accessible or it's expensive. So a good thing to do is to learn which crops are most likely to be contaminated. And a good source of information on that, there's a group in Washington called the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. And they periodically publish a list of what they call the Dirty Dozen, which are the 12 most contaminated crops. Strawberries are always at the top of the list.
Really?
Other things like green beans, and then they have also a Clean 15 list, which is the least contaminated, things like avocados and bananas. So if you're buying something from the Dirty Dozen list, it's probably worth making an effort to get it organic or not eat it.
Got it.
From the Clean 15 list, doesn't matter. So that's a way of, it's
So
a
try
good
to
thing
get
to-
organic on that list if possible. But isn't sometimes like organic still has chemicals or pesticides, even if it says organic? I mean,
No, we have good organic standards now.
Okay.
I mean, the industry is constantly trying to whittle them away.
Okay.
But we've beaten it back so far. I mean, there was when they first got that USDA organic certification, I remember there was an attempt to allow, the industry wanted to allow sewage sludge to be put on crops and still call it organic.
Oh my gosh.
That we beat that back.
Wow.
Yeah. But if it's got that seal on it, it's good. Now, however, also realize that it costs money for farmers to get that certification. So small farmers often can't afford that. So if you're at local farmers markets and small growers, often growers will say that they're pesticide free. You know, they can't afford the USDA organic certification, but they'll say that their crops, they don't use pesticides,
still
which is
good.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also, don't keep poisons around the house, herbicides, pesticides, all of those things. You don't want to be exposed to them.
When you mention plastics, avoiding plastics, what does that include?
That
Drinking out of
includes-
plastic bottles, living with plastic in your life?
Yeah, as much as possible, because what you see happening is that plastics that we've always considered safe turn out not to be.
Like what?
I don't remember what the latest one that I've seen.
Sir, like drinking out of a plastic bottle or like...
Yeah, drinking out of a plastic bottle, using plastic storage dishes for food.
Really?
Use glass instead. Use glass bottles.
Or tin or something else.
Right.
Yeah.
With plastic wrap for food, there's, some of them have chemicals called phthalates in them.
Plastic wrap, like a wrap to store the food.
Yeah, but there's some brands that don't have that.
So don't get plastic when you're wrapping the food.
Or look,
Yeah.
again, use that EWG site that I gave you. They rate all these products.
EWG.org is that what it
Yeah,
is?
the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. They also have, you can look up things like cosmetic products, shampoos and lotions
Deodorants
and creams and deodorants, and you'll tell you which ones, they have a color code, green being safe and red being no. Yeah, that's very useful information.
EWG has a lot of this stuff on all these products out in the market
all
right
online, right, and they're rated by particular brands.
Really?
Yeah.
Based on how environmentally friendly, or if they have plastics, or if
And what
they have
chemicals they
poisons
got in
or
them.
whatever.
Yeah, all that, right.
Wow.
They test them, and it's a very good organization.
Okay, I'm going to look at that for sure.
Yeah.
Who is more likely to go through cognitive decline in general, men or women, and why do you think?
I don't know the answer to that. Women live longer than men, and we don't know why that is either. When you look around the world at areas where there are, people over 100, when you get up in those age ranges, it's mostly women. There's one exception that I know is the island of Sardinia off Italy, that a high population of centenarians and men and women are equal, and nobody knows why.
Really? But there it's more equal versus other places.
Yeah, other
mostly
places,
women.
women greatly outnumber men when you get up in the upper 90s and hundreds. There's one theory that the Y chromosome is toxic, that it produces toxic gene products that do men in. I don't know that we know
Interesting.
the answer to that. I mean, it's also possible that men engage in more
Physical activities
risky
and, yeah.
behaviors and.
It's also like the size. It's like, is it harder to pump blood
Right.
and recover when you're
Right.
bigger, physically than a woman?
Yeah.
I don't know if that has something to do with it. And maybe in Sardinia, there might be like tinier men. I don't know.
We don't know. I haven't been there, so I can't say.
What do you think is, you've been in this kind of health and wellness industry for a long time. You've seen trends come and trends go. You've seen new discoveries happen over the last, 40, 60
Yeah.
years. What do you feel like we're missing in this, health world that we need to be focusing on more, that we haven't actually leaned into or discovered yet? And what do you also think will be happening over the next 5 to 10 years with new discoveries?
Can I say a word about psychedelics?
Can you say what?
A word about
Yeah, go ahead.
psychedelics?
Yeah.
I never thought I'd write another book. I've written 15 books. My publisher has persuaded me to write a book on psychedelics.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting work on that. And it's titled Psychedelics Can Save the World, which I truly believe. And, I've been involved with them since way, way back. And I am very excited to watch this, what's happening with them. They are really entering the mainstream. I think they have tremendous potential for healing. And I'm a little disappointed that all the attention has been on the possibilities of using them in psychiatric medicine for depression and PTSD and so forth, which, is great. But I think they have incredible potential for physical healing as well, because I've seen that again and again. And frankly, I think it's the only thing I see out there that has a potential to save us from disaster.
Really?
Yeah, because we are clearly headed for disaster. And it's only going to be through a transformation of consciousness.
Wow.
That I think we can save ourselves, and they have the potential to do that. And as it is amazing. Before the pandemic, when I was traveling around a lot and speaking, no matter where I was and what I was talking about, whether it was on anti-inflammatory diet or integrative medicine or healthy aging, the questions I get would be about psychedelics.
Right.
Where can I get them? How can I take them? How can I do this? A few months ago, Vogue magazine had a cover story on psilocybin. Town and Country magazine, of all places, recently had an article titled, "Why is everybody smoking toad venom?" I mean, this is like clearly becoming a mainstream phenomenon. And sooner I hope, they will be forced out of the restrictive drug schedule they're now in,
Sure.
and they'll become available. And I think the potential out there is tremendous. And I've seen remarkable physical healings in people, instantaneous, of lifelong patterns that can change.
Sure.
Just by changing something in your head.
Now, I want to ask you a question about this, because I've never taken psychedelics. I've never been high. I've never been drunk in my life.
Well, that's admirable.
Never been. Yeah, I don't know if that's admirable or just a choice I decided to
right.
make. Now, it doesn't mean I didn't have pain and suffer in other
yeah.
ways.
Right.
And maybe getting high and smoking weed would have helped me relieve certain pains. I don't know, because I've never done it. But I want to ask you. I want to ask you a question about this, because I think this is interesting. I've been conflicted with psychedelics, and I know a lot of people that do them and swear by them and say they've had these miraculous healings. And I'm like, that's awesome if it's supporting you.
Right.
And then I see other people that keep taking them and nothing changes. And but they swear by it. Well, I had this healing, but then they're still in darkness. And it's like, okay. Is it something we use consistently, or is it a tool that unlocks us to start integrating like holistic?
I don't think it's something
practices?
you use consistently.
Okay.
And also, weed is not a psychedelic.
Right. But I mean, just like weed, but then I mean psychedelics in general.
Yeah. No, I think for many people, a single experience with them, or occasional experience does it.
Is enough.
Yeah. And I wrote, my first book was called The Natural Mind, and it was about altered states of consciousness and drugs, written it's 50 years ago.
Wow.
It came out. It's still in print and still used. And Alan Watts gave a blurb for the book.
Wow.
And he there was a quote in it I really like, referring to using drugs frequently. He said, when you get the message, you hang up the telephone.
You don't need to keep using it.
No, exactly.
Now here's another question for you. You studied meditation and spirituality and a lot of these different things, and study with a lot of people as well who've done that. I have found that in my meditative practices, when I truly allow myself to be in calm consistently, now this might take days to do till I can get to that point where I'm like fully disconnected from stresses and environmental things that are causing me to feel triggered or reactive.
Yeah.
But when I am able to go into those places, which, it's a privilege to be able to do that and take a few days and do that, I get it. But when I'm able to do that, I feel like I'm having the most transcendental journeys in my mind, and feeling the physical benefits of that as well, of healing through my own internal pharmacy, let's say, without an external thing causing the pharmacy internally to transform. It's also with the integrative of constant healing and applying the lessons I learned from that and having support in that ways, which allows me to keep integrating it. So what are your thoughts on first practicing like other holistic ways before the psychedelics?
Yeah.
Because I'm all for it if you've tried everything, you've spent time in nature, you've done different therapies, and you're still suffering and there's no way out. What I get worried about is when people say, I feel like I'm stressed, let me take a psychedelic, or I feel like I'm overwhelmed and I'm just like, I don't know how to manage this, let me take a psychedelic. That's my only concern.
Well, that's not how I think they should be used.
Right.
You know, I think there should be preparation for the experience and so forth. First of all, it's very likely that we have an endogenous psychedelic in our brains.
Inside of us.
Yeah, it's probably DMT, which is found in many plants. And in that that psychedelic toad. It's probably produced in the pineal gland.
Yes.
And maybe when you have profound experiences through other methods, there's a release of that in the brain.
Yes.
So that's first thing.
The third eye.
Yeah,
Getting into the pineal
exactly,
gland
right.
and moving the energy up
Right.
into the pineal gland and
Right.
having that DMT experience. We can create that without the
Right.
drug. Yeah.
But I think the transformative experience that I've seen have mostly resulted when people have been prepared, have done preparation for the use, not taking it casually and
Right,
not
that's
to not to sort of fix themselves.
Right. Okay, yeah. I'm all for learning and exploring, but I'm also like, man, I've never done that stuff. So I know you have, but I know there's other healing modalities that are available without that for people.
True. However, the other healing modalities tend to be slow.
True.
And the psychedelic can provide that almost instantaneously.
It's true. Just going to talk therapy, you may not get those results. It might take years of like going once a month before you get very little results.
Yeah. Also, I heard a wonderful, I don't know who said this about talk therapy, is that, when you've got a poisoned arrow in you, you want to know how to get it out. You don't want to know how it got there.
Right. I hear you. That's funny, yes. And that's why I think when, I've had to try to take the approach of like extreme, measures when it comes to like healing, like really diving into like intensive workshops, really diving into like I've done 8-hour therapy sessions where I'm like, no, let's get to the roots. Like give it to me.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to be willing to go there.
Yeah, I agree.
If you don't take the psychedelics, you've got to say, I'm going to face this pain head on, bring it on, let's go. I'm willing to open up and do the work.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's going to just continue suffering. So anyway, that's my caveat for my consciousness, to make sure I speak about that as well. But I know I have friends who swear by ayahuasca and different psychedelics that have supported them in awakening things that are holding them back. But you still got to take the action consistently once you're aware of it. So,
well, we'll see what happens, but I'm very hopeful about seeing this,
That you think that's going to be the next wave, though.
Yeah.
I hope people do it consciously and effectively, and
Of
not
course,
just as like a casual thing.
No,
That's the only challenge.
Yeah.
Anything else you feel like we're missing that is going to be coming after psychedelics in terms of healing and wholeness? Because
I'm a big proponent of mind-body medicine, and actually it's something that I've learned from psychedelics is that by changing things in your head, you can change things in your body and in the external world, and that has been so ignored in medicine. Conventional medicine and science really don't believe in the mind and that the mind can affect the body.
Really?
Yeah.
Our thoughts can affect the body.
Yeah.
But our thoughts do affect the body.
Yeah.
And for good or
Obviously, but
bad.
that's not taken advantage of. It's not acknowledged, and it's because our science and medicine are totally dominated by a materialistic paradigm, which does not see the reality of the non-physical. I think that's going to change, and I think that'll bring a lot of good. It'll free a lot of things up.
But there's so many frequencies that are not physical, not material. The frequency of thinking, the frequency of feeling love.
Of love, yeah.
Those are frequencies that you can't measure physically, right?
But they're real.
And you talked about last time how you allowed yourself to heal more when you created love, and you felt loved by another human and got into relationships. Your body healed.
Yeah.
So how do we study that, and how do we get into that next of studying the mind and the emotions?
We're creeping up on it. These new techniques of brain imaging. We can image living brains, and we've been able to show that placebo responses really are associated with actual activity in certain brain regions, or that experienced meditators have changes in the size of certain areas of the brain. So this begins to make it real for people.
Yeah, I went to a 7-day meditation retreat with Dr. Joe Dispenza a few months ago, and he had a lot of different scientists there, I guess, studying, 15 different test points, I guess, from like brain imaging to
Yeah.
blood to feces to saliva to all these things every day, mapping and exploring like the benefits. And it's amazing to see the natural pharmacy
Right.
that we have in
Yeah.
terms of healing ourselves
Yeah.
with thinking, with breathing, like you talked about the
4-7-8
breathing.
breath, right.
This is a healing experience, and incorporating the mind body, I think, is a very powerful thing. How can we start to learn to teach this earlier so kids have this philosophy?
You just do it. I mean, you
Right.
can like teach kids the 4-7-8 breath, for example.
Yeah, this is beautiful stuff. I'm very excited about this, and I'm excited about everything you're creating and the message you bring to the world. I want to mention, before I ask the final questions, I want to mention about your website at matcha.com. This thing is pretty cool. I'm going to try this. Integrative hydration, matcha plus electrolytes.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool. I'm a big fan of electrolytes, but
Well,
why
try
add
this
matcha to
because
electrolytes?
it's for the polyphenols and the antioxidants and all that good stuff. And while there is caffeine in matcha, it's moderated by this other amino acid, L-theanine, that has a calming effect. So the stimulation of tea and matcha in particular is very different from that of coffee and other caffeine plants. It's like calm alertness, people describe.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not a jittery
Not jittery.
like coffee.
No.
Gotcha. So when you add matcha with electrolytes, what does that do? It adds.
Well, it's very tasty, first of all. It's a very pleasant drink. You get, a nice alert feeling from it. It's good. I'm a big fan of matcha, and I started this company, matcha.com,
Yeah.
that brings high-quality matcha, and turmeric, fermented turmeric also.
So now you got fermented turmeric there as well.
Yeah,
People can get.
yeah.
It's amazing. I love matcha.com. It's a great domain. I'm inspired by it.
And we'll give, your listeners a discount.
Oh, what do we
got?
got?
Just the code is SOG.
SOG, and they get a discount.
Yeah.
Awesome. What do they get? How much off do we know?
I don't remember what it is.
They'll give
but
you a percentage
We'll give you a
off.
percentage off.
Go to matcha.com, use SOG when you check out, and
You'll get it.
we'll get you a discount there. I love that. And what is the main website for you where people can
It's
learn about-
drweil.com, drweil.com. And also, I recommend that people check out the Integrative Medicine Center at the University of Arizona. It's integrativemedicine.arizona.edu.
Okay.
There are a lot of wonderful educational offerings, including a number for general public.
Okay, cool. I asked you these two questions last time, my final questions. I'm curious where you're at this season of life from almost 2 years later. Before I ask them, I want to acknowledge you, Dr. Weil, for how you keep showing up and keep being curious and keep trying to bring new ideas to the world and exploring and adapting them so that we can consume them. So I really acknowledge you for your generous wisdom that you
Thank you.
continue to bring to all of us to optimize our health. I asked you this last time, so I'll have to go back and look and see what your response
Okay.
was. But it was the 3 truths question, 3 truths. So imagine you get to live as long as you want to live and accomplish everything you want to accomplish for the rest of your life. But for whatever reason, you got to take all of your work and your message with you. So we don't have this conversation, your books, everything's gone for whatever reason, hypothetical. But you get to share 3 lessons of wisdom you would share with the world from everything you've known about your life. I call it 3 truths you would share. What would be those 3 truths for you?
Well, I think one of them is everything is as it should be.
It's hard for people to accept.
I know. I think another one is that you have the ability to heal yourself. And that it's really important to love yourself.
Why do you think most people are never taught how to love themselves?
That's a good question. Yeah,
It's almost like that should be one of the first things we learn.
absolutely.
It's how to love and accept who you
Yeah.
are. Even if you're not where you want to be, you
Yeah.
can still love and accept
Yeah.
who you are and the mistakes you've made and move
Yeah.
forward. And this could be my next book, How to Love Yourself, right? Figure that out.
Good.
I love those 3 truths. This is the final question. What is your definition of greatness?
I think really using your full potential.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dr. Weil,
All
thank you
right.
so much. Appreciate
Pleasure.
you.
If you enjoyed that interview, then I know you'll love what we have coming up right now. What would you say are the brain foods that would actually help increase our mood, the function of our mood, to feeling better, not in an addictive I need this all the time, McDonald's hit,
Right.
but overall calming, happy, healthy mood.
Well, I think that, omega-3 sources are huge. We know those are really necessary for brain health. So, oily fish are the best sources. I think there are some of the mushrooms. The one most studied is lion's mane, which is a very good edible mushroom, but that really looks as if it improves cognitive function and protects the brain. I think anti-inflammatory agents like turmeric, ginger are great.
Olive oil is good
Olive
too.
oil, of course.
Do you take supplements yourself?
I do. I take a multi-nutrient supplement. I take CoQ10. I take magnesium. I take a number of mushroom formulas.
Really? And you make them yourself?
I don't make them, but a friend of mine does, and I'm a great believer in mushrooms and their medicinal benefits.
How long have you been studying mushrooms?
Geez, probably since the 1970s also. I first became interested in, I grew up, my mother was very fearful of mushrooms, as many people were. She said, don't even touch them, you'll get poisoned.
Really?
Yeah. And so I first got interested in food mushrooms, and then started when I began reading about Chinese medicine to see how much they were valued in Chinese medicine. And in Western medicine, we never paid any attention to them. So that interested me, and I began looking at, what are the effects of these things and why are they so much loved in Asia? And they're really interesting. A lot of these affect immunity, resistance to cancer, viruses. They're great. So I began, really became knowledgeable about mushrooms.
Really?
Yeah.
So you take them daily or weekly?
And I eat mushrooms whenever I get the chance.
Mushrooms are powerful, huh?
They're real powerful.
Wasn't there a documentary called The Magic Power of Mushrooms or something?
I'm
Did you
sure.
see this on Netflix, I think?
Yeah.
There's how many species of mushroom?
Countless. I don't think we know
Thousands,
all of them.
right?
Yeah, thousands and thousands. And the percentage of them that can kill you is very tiny. So when you go out, when you learn to pick wild mushrooms, the first thing you want to do is learn the ones that can kill you.
Right.
And those are fairly easy to learn. And then once you learn those and avoid them, you can experiment. And the worst thing you're going to get is a stomach ache of one sort or another.
For a few hours and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Talk to me about teas, because I'm interested in teas.
Sure.
And the power of teas, and what is the purpose of tea, and why do people drink it so much in general?
Okay, first of all, tea all comes from one plant. It's Camellia sinensis, the tea plant. A lot of things people call teas are herbal infusions, that aren't made from the tea plant. So chamomile tea is not tea.
It's not tea.
Rooibos tea is not tea.
What is it? It's just herbs.
It's an
put
herbal
together.
infusion, But if you're talking strictly about tea, it's all from this one species of plant.
And where does the species grow? It can grow anywhere.
Well, it's native to China and India, but it can. I hear people are cultivating tea in Oregon now. I haven't tried any of it yet.
Interesting.
Anyway, so it can grow over a wide, it can't take frost, but it can grow in, a lot of different areas. Okay. But then there are many varieties of tea depending on how the tea is grown, how it's treated, whether it's steamed, dried, roasted, toasted, how long it's oxidized, and you've got like everything from white tea, which is very delicate, green tea, oolong tea, black tea, there's all sorts of different preferences. When I was growing up, tea was what old people and sick people drank.
Right. Or iced tea on the golf course.
With a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And the only tea that we had available, was tea in bags, and that's the common stuff is literally the sweepings from the floor of tea estates. So it's been only relatively recently that people in this country have become aware of good tea.
What are the benefits of tea? Why drink tea?
Well, it's agreeable. Throughout for centuries, people have found it to be agreeable. It's a stimulant. It's got caffeine.
All tea, or I guess?
All true tea has caffeine. Some has more than others.
Like a mint tea that's non-caffeine,
that's not tea. There is, however, mint-flavored tea. So you got to read the label.
But that's with caffeine.
Yes,
if
that's with
tea,
caffeine.
It has caffeine.
Right. Now, the stimulation, however, of tea is very different from that of coffee. Coffee has more caffeine in it, but they have different other things in them. And tea has a compound called L-theanine that you've probably heard of. That's a relaxant. And I think that combination really affects the quality of stimulation of caffeine.
So it's got caffeine, which gives you sharper energy, but also a relaxation.
Yes,
so,
so people, I think describe it as a relaxed alertness.
Interesting.
Different from the stimulation of coffee, which I personally think is much more jangling.
A jittery alertness versus a calm alertness, a focused alertness.
Exactly. Now, the other observation I make, I don't want to bash coffee too badly, but I see an awful lot of people who are addicted to coffee, physically addicted. If they try to stop, they have a withdrawal syndrome. It's like a lethargy and then a pounding headache, and it can, it lasts for 48 hours and instantly relieved if you have some coffee.
Right.
You don't see that with tea, rarely.
Like, I need my tea this morning.
Exactly. Rarely.
I'm on my fifth cup of tea.
Exactly. And also, when I was actively seeing patients, I used to say that I would produce one miracle cure a week by getting somebody to stop drinking coffee. And it was from everything from hand tremors to irregular heartbeats to bladder problems, GI problems, stomach problems, a whole range of stuff, and they had no idea that the coffee was doing it to them.
You got them off the coffee, and they were like 2 weeks later they were fine.
Fine, and these were often problems that had gone on for years, and
people's hearts.
Nobody had ever told them no.
You're breaking people's hearts.
Exactly right. But also, there's a huge variation in how people respond to caffeine in general and coffee in particular. I see people who have no idea that the 1 cup of coffee they have in the morning is the reason they can't sleep at night. And I see other people who can drink a pot of coffee at bedtime and fine. So you got to find out where you are on that spectrum.
Yeah, I can have a cappuccino at night after like 10 o'clock and pass out the next hour.
You're relatively caffeine insensitive.
Yeah. Not that I need it. I just like little taste or whatever. And I wonder, and I'll drink it in the mornings, and it doesn't like give me more energy. I feel like I have energy.
Right. But when people say they get energy from coffee, it's their energy. Coffee just bunches it up. And when it wears off, you're left with a depletion of energy.
Really? What do you mean it's their energy that bunches it up?
Caffeine isn't giving you a gift of, coffee isn't giving you a gift of energy. It's like it's forcing your body to give up chemically stored energy that it would normally not release all at once.
Like stored where? In the fat cells or in the...
No, in all cells. It's in all cells, in energetic compounds in all cells. But when you release that energy, then when the drug wears off, you have a depletion of energy.
And you feel tired.
Yeah, you have a crash. So...
And why does tea not do that specifically?
Probably because it's less caffeine, so it's gentler stimulation, and it's also got this other compound that moderates the thing. So I guess you could find tea addicts. I don't see them very often.
Right.
And I don't see many people who say they get a crash from tea drinking.
What?
And also coffee does have, there are health benefits of coffee, but there's been a tremendous amount of research on health benefits of tea. Like especially green tea.
Like what are the benefits?
Overall lower death rates.
Really?
Yeah, there's a huge population study in Japan.
Is that because of the tea or because of all the other factors, the environment, and friends?
We don't know. But there's a clear association between the more tea people drink, lower all causes of death. It's got improved cardiovascular health, lower rates of cancer, all sorts of stuff like that. And of the various forms of tea, personally, I think green tea has been most studied.
Here's the thing, when I drink green tea in the morning with no food, it makes me feel a little upset. Like I've thrown up before.
I've heard this from people.
I could get a little nauseous sometimes.
I hear this from people, so you want to have food in your stomach.
Right.
That's a fairly simple fix.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But why is that, do you think?
I don't know. And
with coffee, I'm fine.
I mean, interesting. I
can
know
drink coffee in the morning and not eat all day.
I do not know why.
Huh. Maybe there's a compound in the tea that's stimulating something. Interesting.
So my preferred form is matcha green tea, which is the powdered tea.
Yeah, but matcha doesn't make me feel sick.
Okay,
I
good.
like matcha.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
You got to try our matcha, which is the best.
Which you guys have, the best domain in the tea world, which is matcha.com.
Yeah, that was a good score.
And why did you get in, how did you get into matcha?
When I was 17, I was on a student exchange program. This was 1959.
Rotary?
No, actually, it was an experimental school called the International School of America.
Your whole life just sounds woo-woo and out there, which I love.
This was great. I got to travel around the world for 9 months and live with native families in different cultures.
You didn't speak the language.
Changed my life.
Well,
anyway.
It's for a quick story there before you tell it. My dad, we had 7 exchange students live with us when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it's like, we didn't have the money to travel.
Right. But
it's
you
like
brought it to you.
We brought it to me, so we had people from all over the world teaching us the culture and the food.
There's
and the
no
language. It was
substitute for that.
amazing.
No substitute for that, for
amazing.
knowing about other cultures.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Sorry, go
so
ahead.
I lived with Japanese families outside of Tokyo and Kobe. And the Japanese family outside of Tokyo, there was supposed to be a student studying English, but there was no language.
No one spoke English.
No one spoke English. So the second night that I was there, the mother, through gestures, made known she wanted to take me next door to her neighbor who was a tea ceremony practitioner.
That's kind of cool.
It was cool. So the three of us sat around, and this woman in kimono made matcha. So first of all, the color of the matcha just blew me away. I mean, it's this brilliant green powder. I'd never seen green like that. And then the whisk that they whisked it in a bowl to a froth is a marvel of Japanese craftsmanship, carved from a single piece of bamboo. And that whisk just, I loved it. I wanted one of those. So I then, in the 1970s, I began going to Japan fairly regularly for different things. And whenever I'd go, I'd bring matcha back and turn people onto it. Nobody had ever heard of matcha. And I'd make it for people. And somewhere in the 80s, maybe 90s, I started importing matcha from a company in Japan that I met and selling it on my website, drweil.com. Way ahead of its time. You know, there was no awareness of matcha
Before
at all.
Starbucks made it popular. Yeah.
So, but then watching matcha suddenly become popular here, I was amazed, but also disappointed that so much of the matcha here was terrible.
Well, it's just sugar infused.
But also the matcha itself, because it's such a fine powder, it's got a huge surface area. It oxidizes very quickly. So if it's not stored properly, it loses that green color, becomes sort of yellowish green or gray green. It gets bitter. And a lot of people, that's all the only matcha they've tried is stuff like that. So I really wanted to turn people on to good matcha.
What are the benefits of matcha in general?
Well, it's the only form of tea in which the whole leaf is consumed. And it's got a higher content of antioxidants and flavor compounds than that L-theanine than other forms of tea. So it's grown in an unusual way. It's like they're special tea plants, and starting about 3 weeks before they harvest it, they cover the plants with shade cloth. It's about a 90% shade cloth, so pretty dark. And in response to that, the leaves get bigger.
To try to get the sun.
To get it bigger and thinner, they produce more chlorophyll to try to make more energy, and they produce more antioxidants and more flavor compounds. And then the leaves are harvested, steamed, dried, aged, and then they're ground between stones. It used to be done by hand. Now they're sort of mechanically
Machines,
driven,
yeah.
but it's these grooved granite stones to this superfine powder. And so it's it's a special form of tea that has higher content of all the good stuff.
I'm gonna have to come to Tucson and have you make me some.
I would
sometime.
love to do
whisk
that.
Whisk it up for me.
I would love to do
or
that.
just go to Japan and,
I'd love to do that.
Find a
Right.
specialty place.
But meantime, you can get it from our website, matcha.com.
Matcha.com.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
Do you guys teach how to make it too?
Yes,
and
there's
sell the
instructional
whisks and-
videos, and we sell everything.
bowls and everything.
Everything's all there.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. So it's been fun to turn people onto that.
So why matcha over jasmine or green? What's the?
I think it's personal
Just
preference,
taste.
whatever you like. I like first of all, I just like the look of matcha. I
Yeah.
like the taste of it. I like the ritual of whisking it.
Yeah.
Well, you can do it any way you want.
And is it, the Starbucks way is like you put almond milk in it or something, but how would you, is this with water? Is this with?
Yeah, I like it just with water, no sweetener. That's just the way I like it. I also like iced matcha. I use an electric whisk in room temperature water and then put ice cubes in it. And then when it's hot weather, I like that a lot.
Wow.
I like to drink green things.
What's the, are you drinking one tea a day? Do you have
I'd say
multiple
one a day.
for you?
Yeah, usually one a day or early in the day. I mean, occasionally I'll have another one, but I usually don't need more than one.
What's your nighttime ritual?
My nighttime ritual, I eat early.
What's that, 5,
I like
7?
4 to 5, I would say.
That's your dinner.
Yeah, I like to cook. So even if I'm by myself, I usually cook for myself. Simple stuff, but I like simple, delicious things. So, and I like cooking for other people. And then after dinner, I like to often read, watch movies, depending on the weather, of course. I mean, if it's up in BC and it's light till 10 o'clock, I'm, outdoors and...
Right. You're living the dream. You've done so many different interesting things. What's the thing you're most proud of that you've created for the world?
There is now a center at the University of Arizona College of Medicine named the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
And we're the world leader in education in this field.
Wow.
As I said, we've graduated over 2,000 physicians from our trainings. We train medical students. We have our curriculum in 80 residency programs. We train other health professionals. We train, chiropractors, dentists, nurses in integrative medicine. And, as I've always said, one day we'll be able to drop the word integrative. It'll just be good medicine. And that's coming.
And integrative is that the exclusion of medicine, like traditional medicine?
No, it builds on conventional medicine.
So you still can prescribe
absolutely
traditional medicine.
Yeah, if I've always said if I'm in a serious car accident, I don't want to first go to a Christian Science practitioner or a chiropractor or shaman. I want to go to a trauma center and get put back together. But then I'd use other methods I know to speed up healing.
Right.
So I think frankly, one of the things I can see happening. I think that. A lot of smaller and community hospitals aren't going to be there in the future. I think nobody's going to be able to afford, that stuff. And that what we call conventional medicine, allopathic medicine, that may become a specialty for dealing with trauma, for critical illness, and there'll be one large facility in cities that has all the hardware. And there'll be new kinds of institutions that'll come into being, that I think of as healing centers. So that's one possible future.
You've seen the obesity go up in America since the last 50 years. Yeah. It probably wasn't 2/3 back then. It was probably 1/3 maybe, or not even. I don't know what it was back then.
Well, I remember watching, a few years ago, I watched the whole Ken Burns documentary on World War II.
Okay.
It was on PBS. And there were many crowd scenes, both military and civilian, thousands of people. You don't see a single fat person in those crowds.
Is it because they didn't have the money to buy food? Is it because they're,
No, it's not. And, the other interesting thing is if you look what people were eating in those days, they didn't know a lot of what we know now.
They weren't processing food as much, too, right?
But people ate, they were eating meat and potatoes and
rice
pies and whatever. Yeah. But it was real food made from scratch. They were not eating manufactured food. They weren't eating fast food.
There was no fast food then.
Right. But there's an enormous change in how people looked. I read there was a book that came out a few years ago that was trying to argue that the obesity epidemic was an artifact of statistics, the way we were measuring people. Bullshit. You just look at this, it's like unbelievable how people have changed.
Everyone was fit or looked thinner back then, right? And now everyone looks fatter.
Yeah.
What do you think in the next 50 years we're going to be as a country in terms of obesity?
I saw this was a couple years ago. I read that the military is really having problems finding people who are qualified for military service because of obesity. If it's threatening national defense, you'd think, now people are going to take it seriously. We got to do something.
Just because they're not in shape enough to pass the test, the physical test?
Yeah. We're in such a mess in this country with regard to food and nutrition. It's hard to know where to start. Where I would start is if we could get people to stop drinking sweet liquids. Right. That would be, we'd have to put us so far ahead of the curve.
Soda pop.
And it's not just soda pop. It's also fruit juice. It's energy drinks. It's putting sugar in coffee and tea. All the Starbucks matcha.
Yeah.
So that would be one place to start, just to not drink sweet liquids. Mm-hmm. That would be a big step.
What about alcohol consumption?
I don't, sure. I think the whole key with alcohol is moderation.
Yeah.
There's constant arguments about whether it's beneficial or harmful, and I think moderation is the key. I don't think that's nearly as big a factor as sugar.
Really?
Right.
And when you created an anti-inflammatory diet, right?
Yeah.
When was that?
Long ago, and I have a history of being ahead of the curve in a lot of areas. That I've been able to foresee trends. I think the first people to warn people about trans fats 10 years before people took notice of that. So I became aware of this beginnings of this hypothesis that chronic inflammation was the root cause of a lot of different kinds of serious chronic diseases. And that just fascinated me, because when I was in medical school, I was taught that cardiovascular disease had nothing in common with cancer, and that had nothing in common with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. And now suddenly it looks like, all of these things are linked. They have a common root of chronic inflammation. And if that's the case, the good news is then there's a common strategy for dealing with them if you can reduce inappropriate inflammation. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about inflammation. Inflammation is the cornerstone of the body's healing response. That's
inflammation. So inflammation is good when you're in pain.
Well, it's good. It's the way the body gets more nourishment and more immune activity to an area that's injured or under attack.
Right.
So we all know it on the surface of the body. It's redness, swelling, pain, heat. But we aren't aware of it necessarily internally, and especially if it's low level. Inflammation is so powerful and it's so potentially destructive that it's very important that it ends when it's supposed to end and stay where it's supposed to stay.
So you don't want it throughout your body all the time.
If information persists, if it outlives its purpose, then it causes disease. And it looks now, if you can't produce enough inflammation, you're vulnerable to infection. If you produce too much inflammation, you're vulnerable to allergies and autoimmunity. And it looks like if you've got low-level chronic inflammation going on for a long time, you greatly increase risks of cardiovascular disease, of neurodegenerative disease, and cancer. And so I think one of the best things we can do is learn how to contain it. So what are the factors that influence it? It's partly genetic, it's stress. Exposure to environmental toxins is a big one. Secondhand cigarette smoke is a very powerful pro-inflammatory agent. But diet has a huge influence, and that's one that's potentially under our control.
Right.
And I think there's no question that the mainstream North American diet is strongly pro-inflammatory. It gives us the wrong kinds of fats, the wrong kinds of carbs, and not enough of the protective elements, which are mostly in fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, tea, things like that.
Yeah. So what would be the anti-inflammatory diet?
So a base of high quality produce. And the government always tells us to eat more fruits and vegetables, but the emphasis really should be on vegetables.
Okay.
Because fruits are sugar sources, and you want to,
veggies, more veggies.
More veggies. You want to avoid pro-inflammatory fats, which are things like, hydrogenated fats, margarine, vegetable shortening, and the polyunsaturated vegetable oils.
Okay.
So, you want to eat olive oil should be your main
thing.
Fat.
Or avocado oil.
Or avocado oil, yeah.
Gotcha.
Nuts, seeds, good.
They're good, yep.
Yes. In terms of carbohydrate, it's not that carbohydrates are bad, it's that you want to reduce consumption of quick digesting ones, the ones that turn quickly into blood sugar. So everything made with flour. And that's all the snack foods, all the, it's everything, yeah. And sweeteners in general. I mean, that doesn't mean you live without sugar completely, but you want to really keep that to a minimum.
So is this all flour, or is this just more?
It's all flour. I think one of the
almond flour and.
Well, that's a nut. So that's better. But with grains, I think there's such misunderstanding. If I ask people to name a whole grain food, the usual answer I get is whole wheat flour or whole wheat bread. Whole wheat bread is not a whole grain food. Where's the grain? And the FDA doesn't get that. They let that put labels on it saying this is a whole grain food and good for you. Most whole wheat bread is colored white bread. When you have a grain, the starch is tightly compacted, very dense, and it's surrounded by more or less by a fibrous bran, and it takes time for digestive enzymes to get in there and convert the starch to sugar. when you mill a grain into flour, whether or not the bran is present, whether or not the germ is present, you convert the starch into a material with an infinite surface area. And it's a snap for digestive enzymes to turn that into sugar. So people don't understand this. You know, there is a big difference between a whole grain that you can see, or a grain cracked into a few big pieces, and flour.
Mushrooms have an incredible array of compounds, these polysaccharides, that turn out are immune modulating, anti-cancer, adaptogenic, and so we need to be including a lot more good mushrooms. And you can take mushrooms as supplements, but you can also eat a lot more of the good mushrooms. Also, garlic and onions are really important for sulfur.